Tate Chronicles now transmitting.
Welcome to the Tate Chronicles on Healthcare Now Radio. And now, here's your host, Jim Tate.
Good day, citizens of the free world, from border to border, coast to coast, and to all the ships at sea, I bring you a warm welcome. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and thank you for tuning in to the Tate Chronicles. Join me as we cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. I'm really excited today. My guest is Lisa Nelson. She's the Senior Vice President of Enterprise Integrations at ADVault, and I've been looking forward to talking to Lisa for quite some time, and finally our paths have crossed. Her background includes leading roles in HL7 work groups, co-founding the Gravity Project. Currently, she's heading up the My Directives Solutions initiative. So from CDAs to FIRE and everything in between, I can honestly say her fingerprints can be found all over the interoperability domain. Lisa, welcome to the Tate Chronicles.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to be here. I look forward to talking with you today.
You know, one thing I'm always interested in, and I ask my guests is, in your case, Lisa, what led you to the healthcare information technology field? And really specifically, it seems like you were drawn to advanced directives and the social determinants of health. What's the path for you?
So this is a super interesting question. And my first response was, well, I was a computer scientist and my mom was a nurse.
Oh.
And when you put those two backgrounds together, it can't help but lead you towards health information technology. I think my computer scientist background has caused me to think about how to use technology, information technology, in every aspect of my life. Even as a young person, I used an Access database to do my wedding planning and do the seating chart and keep track of who I needed to send thank you notes out to.
Yeah.
And when it comes to health, we're all, mothers, daughters, sons, individuals who are taking care of people and families. And so healthcare is a pretty obvious place where health IT is needed. And I think that's the same reason why I was really drawn to the topic of advanced directives and social determinants of health, is that I come at this from a very person-centered, a people-centered point of view. And when you think about advanced directives as being one of the first kinds of documents that will really be patient-authored documents that need to get into our health IT ecosystem, that was what inspired me to look in that direction, because I was, of course, the person who led the charge when Consolidated CDA was invented at version 2 to force inclusion of a patient-authored document, not just clinician-authored documents, to be able to take advantage of that standard.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just was going to say, when the last part, the social determinants of health, is obviously if we're all aimed on for the quadruple aim and trying to make health outcomes better, when you consider that 80% of what really makes a difference in getting good health outcomes are the social determinants of health, it makes you realize how important it is to be focused on that, not just the clinical side of things.
Well, let's just, since you kind of brought up that topic, let's dive into that a little bit, those social determinants of health. And certainly in terms of creating health policy and finding trends and where healthcare funding and care needs to be focused, that's got to be very important information. But in terms of interoperability, it sounds like you've done a lot of work to make sure that data, if we're going to call it data or information, is in an interoperable format. Was that difficult to kind of get people to agree to and include in the CCDAs and things?
Well, getting people to agree is one of the biggest challenges we have to interoperability. But focusing on how you code the data is the other aspect. And I think that the biggest challenge we had, at least for patient-generated documents, was more of a policy and a fear to give people that level of control and access to be communicating the information that they author back into the system. I think the biggest barriers that we had there were just the sea change that it represented, and fear about the possibilities, maybe how quickly even the pace of change could happen if suddenly patient-authored documents became a part of the ecosystem. So I think that coded data is really important. Obviously, if you want to include computers to help us process the information, we have to have ways to code it. You can't even check an apple out at a grocery store without there being a little sticker on there that tells you that apple is a 4907.
Right.
We need to have codes to work with computers because that's their language. And we also have to have human readability because that's our language. And so coding data is a necessary evil if we want computers to help us make things more efficient. And I think that that's really, in the social determinants of health space, one of our big challenges, because that information was largely just accumulating in a world without this sort of notion of how do we code the information. And that was one of the big challenges that we needed to begin handling.
We mentioned in my introduction, I mentioned you being a co-founder of the Gravity Project. I first heard of the Gravity Project a few years back from Amit Trivedi, and he said, "Jim, you need to check into that." And so, tell me about what need was seen that led to the founding of the Gravity Project, and what is the Gravity Project?
So that's where it all started. The original need, it stemmed from a grant that was given out where an organization did some studying on the domain of SDOH and how many different code systems were used and how inconsistent and uncoded and just sort of the mess that we were up against, which really was a big barrier to being able to crack into interoperability. And so the original focus of the Gravity Project was solely on looking at the different domains in the SDOH space and saying what content needs to be communicated, and then how do we go about beginning to offer codings so that the data could be captured and exchanged among systems. And it grew beyond that, not just the number of domains. We started out with just 3: food insecurity, transportation problems, and housing. And I think there are over 20 domains that have been studied by the Gravity Project. But more importantly, we realized that we had to establish a framework for thinking about how these two big gears interacted together, the clinical care gear and then the social care gear. And a framework that was established that describes this cyclical or circular iterative process of evaluating someone's needs, determining that there is an issue, identifying what the goal is to be solved, clarifying the interventions or the actions that need to be taken to address it, getting those actions actually done, and then reevaluating to see if progress was made toward the goal. And then you go again. And that cycle of care with showing how the gear of if the intervention that needs to be made is somebody's housing situation needs to be taken care of, how do you turn the social care gear from the clinical care gear and have the response or the activity that got performed feed back in and the reassessment to happen. So it was that framework was really powerful, and it also kind of launched us, the Gravity Project, into the work of understanding closed loop referrals. And how do you send information about a need out into another area of the health ecosystem and then get a response back that allows you to know that that activity got done or didn't get done, and how it feeds into assessing if progress is being made.
Well, and you mentioned such things as housing. I'm sure there are issues related to if folks live in areas which are essentially food deserts.
Yep.
And so if that information is captured, and for lack of a better term, it shows a correlation with higher risk, where does that information go? I mean, I guess it's on a community by community basis if it goes anywhere at all.
The nature of the question, I'll start with my standards hat on. And
Mm-hmm.
the original place that the information goes is it goes from an assessment into some clinical observations that need to be referenced and determined whether or not there's a problem that needs to be worked on, and then what the goal would be. And so originally the first part of where the information travels is from the point of sort of surveying or asking questions and getting answers to the place where the people who can make decisions about, well, what needs to be done, can get access to it. And then an evaluation is made to, in this case, by a clinician to decide, well, do I need to refer someone out? Do I need to send them to go be considered to see if they could be enrolled in a certain program? And there, a lot of the effort, also stemming out of the Gravity Project, is understanding how do we make community directories so that the services that are available that a person could be referred out to can easily be found, and the communication endpoints for sending information to those community organizations can be identified, and then the information can flow to them.
Kind of a push thing. I know that I was talking with the excuse me, EHR vendor organization of the day that's focused on long-term care. And so they generate what they call a fragility index. So in some ways, that's what you're talking about. It may not be gathering all the information and coming up with one discrete number, 1 to 10 or something, but I think you referred to it as a closed loop referral, where as opposed to writing out a address and a phone number and a piece of paper and handing it to a patient and say, maybe these people can help you, electronically in some way, that desire for resources can be kind of expedited and not really require the patient or the individual
Absolutely.
to be totally responsible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Faster, and then also some efficiency about it. Like if you know that 3 or 4 or 5 pieces of information need to be gathered and they've already been collected, then you could supply information that's already been provided to the group that would need that information to then deliver the social care services. So some efficiencies can be gained by being able to share and reuse information that's already been captured.
What is the status of the Gravity Project today? Is it ongoing? Is it?
It is ongoing. I was instrumental in naming the project the Gravity Project because I imagined a force that had the power to sort of organize other things and draw efforts to it, draw people to it, draw efforts to it. We've barely scratched the surface on what really needs to be done and operationalized and incorporated into the way that we mix our efforts between clinical and social care type activities. And I believe that the Gravity Project is the one place where many, many, many organizations can go who are focused on that. And there's different work groups focusing on different domains, different aspects of the information exchange that needs to happen to support that kind of work. And I believe the Gravity Project will be well attended and producing great results for quite some time.
Let's move on to your I know you have a number of current initiatives, but one in particular I want to hear about is the work you're doing at My Directives Solutions. What's being addressed there?
So similar to Gravity Project, one of the most important things that's happening there is this ability to codify the information that's exchanged.
Mm-hmm.
So at a very fundamental level, My Directives and ADVault, it's actually pronounced ADVault,
Mm-hmm.
the A for advance and the D for directives. My company is instrumental in clarifying the types of information that are gathered, the types of documents that are created, and then working with organizations like Regent Street and SNOMED to make sure that we have the needed codes to communicate and codify the information so that systems can help us with the exchange and the sharing of that. So that's one of the exciting things that's going on, and one of the things that's really different about the My Directives solution over other solutions that are out there in the space is that organizations that are drawn to this area don't have the same technical background that we do to really appreciate how do you make the data ready to be part of the health ecosystem.
That's the question when I first started thinking about this, Lisa, is how do you make it ready? So if there's an exchange of a CCDA file, where's that advanced directive and how's it going to be presented? Is it a PDF attachment or is it in a text format?
So that also is a great leading question, Jim. Thanks for these softball pitches. I appreciate it.
Well, okay.
You have sort of the where we are today, and
Right.
you have where we're going in the future.
Good.
And so the specification that we wrote in the CDA world is called PACP, Personal Advanced Care Plan, and it uses a lot of the same templates or corresponding templates to what's been developed in the consolidated CDA kit of templates.
Sure.
But what's different about it is that it's a patient-generated document, and the sections of information are specific to what you need to include in an advanced directive. Who are my healthcare agents? Who am I appointing to make decisions for me if I can't communicate for myself? And then what are some of my care experience preferences or treatment intervention preferences so that the people who, if somebody does have to, my healthcare agent does need to decide for me, they have information about what my preferences were so that they could make decisions that are consistent with what my wishes are. And those are very specific types of information that needed to be communicated that weren't really addressed in the original set of templates in Consolidated CDA, except for one. There is a template called the Advanced Directives section, and in a summary document, clinical document, what clinicians or EHRs would want to be sharing in a patient summary or an encounter summary in that Advanced Directive section would be information about, well, what kind of Advanced Directive documents were available? What did I go and consult or read to understand or take action in my care of this patient? And so the linkage between Consolidated CDA and the efforts that have happened in the documentation of a person's own advanced directives or a clinical document, an order, a portable medical order created by a clinician, is really the ability to document the story of what information came to me that was already in place about that's relevant for this person's care, and what did I use? Did I need to contact the healthcare agent? Did I know who the healthcare agent was? That kind of stuff. So that advanced directive section will be undergoing some elevated requirements in the new version of Consolidated CDA that's out for ballot in January, because USCDI, the national efforts to raise the floor of what all systems can interoperate on, now has three important data elements in the classification that's called patient's goals and preferences. And so raising the bar on the expectation that systems will be able to exchange that kind of data means that it's going to need the advanced directive section to be present in Consolidated CDA type of documents, and that organizations will be expected to be able to document when they know about or relevant preferences that patients had.
Well, in the work at ADVault and specifically at My Directives Solutions, are you working with EHR vendors as partners to help them bring them up to speed on this?
This is the most important thing that I do in my role as enterprise integrations, is in order to make all of this work together, the EHR systems need to be able to make it easy for doctors to have access to information that already exists in the system, either documents that patients have created themselves or these portable medical order types of documents that other clinicians may have worked with the patient to create. And so integration within the EHR is like the next big step in the journey to be able to pull in documents that are available and then really work with the EHRs to understand how to build use the available information in their own workflows. So I'm working specifically with all of the major EHRs and trying to reach out to more of the EHRs that are used in skilled nursing facilities and LTPAC type organizations to help them advance their own capabilities because of this new technological capability that's kind of happening outside of them.
It's kind of hard to believe, Lisa, but we only have about 5 minutes left, and I've got 5 questions. So let's knock these out. They really are some of the things I consider challenges at a very high level to interoperability, in particular, not necessarily the plumbing and the standards, but the actual use of it. Is the data going to be accurate? And the reason I say that is we've got TEFCA being launched. We had an announcement yesterday, the first qualified health information networks. Depending on who you're signed up with, the data that comes out of those faucets, there may be duplication, or there may be cases where a perhaps provisional diagnosis is given to a patient for an off-label use of medication, so their insurance company will pay for it. Do you have any concerns about the accuracy of data?
I think we all do. And, as we transition from paper to digital, it's a question that we're all having to face, no matter what domain you're focused on. And so accurate data is an issue, but we have all new tools. The notion of duplication, being able to find it, identify it, deal with it. We just have a whole set of capabilities that we're going to have that, all those problems exist with our paper data that we have today. We just don't have any means of really dealing with it. So the challenges are there, but we just now have the digital technology to help face them.
And kind of a follow-up to that, do you think the issue of patient identification across all the networks has been solved? Do we know that?
No, and it's an absolute showstopper. We served together on the event that Direct Trust did last week, and there's a great session in there. Maybe you can supply users with the link that talks about digital identity, and it is foundational to everything that happens in the digital world.
Next challenge I kind of wonder about, this is kind of a provider cultural issue, kind of related to the accuracy of data. Will the data be trusted? Patient reported data is not given as much veracity as provider generated data. But what about data from that comes through one of the qualified health information networks on the, one of the providers on the other side of the country? I know there's a lot of lower trust in data that's, received from somebody you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, trust is just like another aspect of data accuracy. And I think that how people will have confidence that the information that they receive in a digital world is true. We face it every day, even just you get a phone call, or do you trust the text message that you got? Trust is a huge factor. And I think that more focus on data provenance and digital signature capability that allows us to know if the data has been altered in transit or not and then ultimately known identities of who the data is actually from will help us increase the quality of the trust or confidence factor.
That's it, the provenance. I agree. Yeah, with that totally. Next question. Who is going to supply the training to providers of really on interoperability, not only how to receive data, but what to do with that data?
Yeah,
best
training
practices.
Will come from training needs to come from a lot of places, and I bring this up when we talk about the charge that we're given to the regional education centers. The training has to come from all over because you need different kind of training for different audiences. Consumers need to be trained, doctors need to be trained, administrators need to be trained. Training in all areas. Being in the education aspect of this would be a very good place to be for a while because so much is new, so much is changing, and that means we need more focus on education.
Lisa, before we totally run out of time, how can our audience find out more about ADVault, My Directives Solutions, and any of the other organizations that you've mentioned that we need to check into?
Sure. The easiest thing to do is to go to mydirectives.com. That is a one-stop shop. You'll be able to be exposed to the consumer-facing, free for consumer use, mydirectives.com tool, where people can create their own advanced directive documents. And that will also give you a link to ADVault Inc., our corporate site, advaultinc.com.
Well, to our audience, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles, and I offer a special salute to my guest today, Lisa Nelson of ADVault. Lisa, thanks for coming aboard today.
Thanks for inviting me, Jim. It's been a great cruise.
You can find more information on this show's program page at healthcarenowradio.com. That's healthcarenowradio.com. Until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors.
Tate Chronicles transmission ending now.